It is 2 o'clock. I'm Zach Merchant, and we continue to follow news that has been developing throughout the day today. We first brought it to you about 2 hours ago. This is the news of a code red lockdown that was put into place at the Hillgrove High School in Cobb County earlier today. Nobody was hurt. The school has since returned to normal operations, but it caused a big scare, as you can imagine, for parents, for teachers, for the students at that campus. You're looking at aerial imagery from earlier today. These are pictures from our helicopter over Hillgrove High School as students appear to be in this picture filing back into school following the conclusion of that code red lockdown. We want to go right now to our Marissa Sarback, who is live outside of Hillgrove High School in Cobb County. Marissa, what is the situation there right now?
The situation is very tense, Zach, for a lot of the parents that have come to pick up their kids from school early. I want to step out and show you right now exactly what it looks like. This is what it's been like for the past 15 minutes or so since we've been here. You can see that long line stretching all the way out to the parking lot. So many of these parents came to pick up their children today. As you can imagine, very scary text messages that they received from their kids who were inside the classrooms as this was happening, and they were trying to figure out exactly what was going down. You can still see some police cars leaving the scene. Everything has calmed down a bit, but again, very tense here for so many of these families, as many of them were unaware of what exactly was happening. They just saw some chaos unfolding. What we do know from the school district is that a 15-year-old was taken into custody, had a firearm on them. That is what they told us, that a firearm was detected on campus. Again, you can see some of these police officers, Cobb School District Police as well as Cobb County Police, leaving the scene at this time. So things have certainly calmed down a bit. But again, at Hillgrove High School today, a very, very scary situation. Many of these parents still coming to pick up their kids. We've spoken with a few of the kids that have been leaving. They said it was terrifying. It was about third period, 11:45 this morning. They say they didn't realize what was happening until they saw some sirens coming up the road, coming up to the parking lot to the school, and they realized that something was wrong. They went into that code red lockdown, unaware what was going on, but just really many of them asking their parents to come pick them up. One of the girls that I spoke with said she was in orchestra. She was shaking as she told us what happened, and people are really having a hard time holding back tears here. Again, everybody is safe. Nobody was hurt at this point, but the district has confirmed that a student was found with a firearm on campus. We're still waiting to learn so much information as to how that firearm was detected and what exactly played out here at the high school. But we do know, again, everybody is safe. That 15-year-old that had that firearm, according to the district, was taken into custody. And at this point, all of these students and parents are heading home for the day.
Marissa, obviously thankful that nobody was hurt, but you're right. It's just such a frightening circumstance, frightening situation, and something that unfortunately we have had to cover and report on a number of times just in the last few months, both hoaxes and threats and sometimes active incidents. Tell us a little bit more about those conversations you had with students, and did you get a chance to talk to any parents as well today, as we still see them behind you lining up to pick up their kids?
Yeah. They've been filing out all across. We're just outside the main entrance here from Hillgrove High School, and we've spoken with both parents and students. Some of the students told me that their parents actually sent an email and signed them out for the day, so that's how they were able to leave early. Some students, I'm told, are still there, so not everyone is leaving early. It was really up to parents' choice at this point whether or not they wanted those students to leave. Many of the parents that I've seen are just rushing over there to get their kids. As you can imagine, some of them at home for the day, some of them at work for the day, to get a text message from their kids like this. One student that I spoke with, he says he texted his mom right away. His phone was on 9% battery, and so he reached out immediately, and the mom says she was grateful that he was able to reach out and tell her to come pick him up, and that he was okay, but he needed to be picked up. So just really something that you certainly never want to deal with as a parent, and never expect you're going to deal with, and hear from your student, your child, saying that a gun was detected on campus, and to please come pick them up. A very, very scary. I could see tears streaming down one of the parents' faces. And another one, as she was driving in, her windows were rolled down, and I could hear her on the phone with her child. She was trying to figure out the quickest and easiest way to pick him up. So just absolutely terrifying for these parents.
Marissa, thank you for being there and bringing us this update. Thankful that everybody is okay. Just just really gut-wrenching to listen to that experience, both the parents and the students. Marissa, we know you're going to stay on top of it for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much. I want to read you now the statement from the Cobb County schools here. I'm going to read it to you in full. It's about a paragraph long as we continue to look at these helicopter images from over the high school from earlier today. This is what the district had to say in a statement. Earlier today, Hillgrove High School was placed on a code red lockdown after a firearm was detected on campus. District police responded immediately, and the situation, from detection to lockdown to the student being taken into custody, was resolved in approximately 12 minutes. A 15-year-old student is now in custody, and the firearm has been recovered. We are grateful for the swift action of our police department. There is no active threat, and teaching and learning have resumed, although as we see, or as we did see from the long line from behind Marissa in that live shot there, many parents going to pick up their students in this situation where, even though the school says that learning has returned to its normal schedule, that the code red lockdown has been lifted, many parents making the understandable decision to go and pick up their kids as soon as possible. You saw that long line of parents and loved ones in their cars outside of the school behind Marissa. And this was a situation, again, that the district said lasted only about 12 minutes, according to that statement from the Cobb County School District. But you can only imagine the fear that those 12 minutes induced on everybody inside that school building as they were in the middle of what was, up to that point, a pretty normal Tuesday in this Cobb County High School, at Hillgrove High School. A 15-year-old student, the district says, is now in custody. The investigative phase of law enforcement's response will continue, and we will continue to monitor and bring you all the latest, including later on right here in 11Alive Plus Streaming Center and on 11Alive News at 4, 5, and 6. As we continue to monitor that, we are also standing by. You're looking at a live picture right now at LaGuardia Airport in New York. You're looking at the wreckage of that fatal crash between a small jet and an emergency response vehicle on the tarmac. It happened late Sunday night. The wreckage is still on the tarmac there as investigators with the NTSB and others work to document the scene, piece together exactly what happened. It's slowing flights and slowing travel through the LaGuardia area. Both pilots on that plane, that Canadian plane, were killed in the crash. Many passengers were injured, some of them severely. We're standing by as we look at this live picture. This is another live picture on your screen right now. We are waiting for a live update, a press conference from the NTSB with the latest on their investigation into that crash at LaGuardia. When it begins, we're going to take it to you live. As we monitor this feed for you, we do want to turn now to another story in the world of aviation and the world of travel that has been getting a lot of attention. That is the long wait times and long delays at the nation's airports, including right here at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson. It's not just us, though. It's all across the country. Now, federal agents with ICE have been deployed to some U.S. airports. It is the latest turn in a long-running saga now after many days of extensive lines at some TSA checkpoints at periods in some of the nation's busiest airports, including right here in Atlanta. And it all stems from the ongoing lack of funding, the partial government shutdown for the Department of Homeland Security. It's now well into its sixth week here. Funding lapsed on February 14th, and TSA workers are now working without paychecks. Many of them are calling out, leading to, in some situations, understaffing and extensively long lines. NBC's Aaron Gilchrist has an update from our airport right here, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson.
What a difference a day makes. We've been watching the lines here at Atlanta's airport, the busiest airport in the world, and it really does seem like a regular day here. You can see the main checkpoint behind me where the lines are not nearly as long as they were at roughly this time yesterday. Even this morning, we talked to some folks who were in line in the pre-check area for more than an hour and a half. But again, the reality right now is that the lines have died down to really normal levels for this time of day at this particular airport. But as we look at airports like New Orleans and in the Houston area and some other parts of the country, they've also still seen these really long lines and these long wait times, but it really ebbs and flows. It kind of depends on where you are and when you're there to determine what sort of conditions you're going to find. That's been the reality for most of the day today in many places, and it's something that's we've talked to some travelers who said it's not really helpful because they don't know how to time out their trip to the airport. One guy we talked to coming in from San Juan said that he got to the airport 7 hours early, but he only had to wait about an hour to get through TSA. Still, the advice that we're getting from airport officials is that folks need to show up at the airport hours ahead of time just to make sure they don't miss their flights. Back to you.
We want to take you now to Capitol Hill, where House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is at the podium at an event focused on a bill to fund ICE, or I should say fund TSA. Let's listen in.
Prevent ICE from being reined in. And of course, we're going to continue to work on ending this reckless war of choice in Iran, where Donald Trump and Republicans are spending billions of dollars to drop bombs in the Middle East, but won't spend a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits in order to ensure that more than 20 million Americans are able to afford to go see a doctor when they need one. We're fighting for health care, not warfare. And Republicans are doing the exact opposite. Questions?
Have you been read in on the deal that's formulating out of the Senate side, particularly when it comes to Senator Schumer and others keeping you in the loop on this? And are you open to the framework that's being offered?
I have not spoken to Leader Schumer this week, but do expect to talk with him later on today, now that we're back in session. And here's the thing. We've been very clear. ICE should be compelled to conduct itself like every other law enforcement agency in the country and not expend billions of dollars in taxpayer money to brutalize and in some cases kill American citizens, as was tragically the situation with Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. ICE should not be violently targeting law-abiding immigrant families and making our communities less safe, not more. And at the same period of time, the problem is that Republicans have decided that they'd rather force TSA agents to work without pay, inconvenience millions of Americans all across the country, and create chaos at airports, rather than enact into law common sense things like requiring ICE agents to secure judicial warrants before they can break into the homes of the American people and rip them out of their beds in the middle of the night. And so we'll evaluate in good faith whatever is presented, but it's got to be consistent if it's going to deal with ICE with the types of changes that are bold, meaningful, and dramatic.
If I can follow up, I mean, the last shutdown fight, you had some concerns that House Democrats.
You're looking right now to split screen on your screen. On the right is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat, in his last answer criticizing ICE. On the left-hand side of your screen, you're looking live inside the Oval Office where President Donald Trump is about to swear in the new leader of the Department of Homeland Security, the new secretary. That's former Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, now about to become the Department of Homeland Security secretary. The DHS secretary leads not only ICE, but also TSA and a number of other agencies. We're going to take you live right now inside the Oval. Gabby, can we turn up the president's mic? And we're going to continue to try to bring you back and forth between these two press conferences as they are unfolding simultaneously.
A real slob of a governor, J.B. Pritzker. in the sanctuary city of Chicago, which we could make safe in 2 months, I would say. 2 months if we sent in the group, Tom, right? 2 months would be good. 3 months, very good. 4 or 5 months, it would be great. But they would never call because they don't want to do that. All they have to do is call and ask for a little help. The Democrats in Congress do not care how much American blood they shed in their demented pursuit of open borders, from Sheridan Gorman to Jocelyn Nungary and Laken Riley. Their quest to flood our country with illegal aliens has left countless American victims in its wake. They never changed. They see what's happening. They never change. That's what they want. They want to get the votes. With sanctuary and sanctuary cities going at levels that they are, and we've ended a lot. We've done a lot. But for some reason, they love it. It's a sanctuary. You know, sanctuary cities are sanctuary for, it's really a sanctuary for criminals. With Secretary Mullen at DHS, we will continue our record-setting efforts to deport these illegal alien criminals from our country, and we are doing at record levels despite a very unfair court system, a radicalized left court system, and others that I'm not too fond of also. And we'll protect innocent American lives. Every single illegal migrant who is a criminal record must be deported immediately. If they have a criminal record, you got to deport them. And there's a lot that came in under Biden. And Kamala, the great border czar Kamala, who never went to the border, never called Border Patrol, never once called Border Patrol. Can you imagine that, Jim? She's the border czar. She never called Border Patrol. Explain that to me. He's the worst. She was as bad as he was. Going to give him IQ tests next week. Under the Trump administration, we've achieved unprecedented gains on public safety. Yesterday, we were in Memphis, Tennessee, to celebrate the steepest reduction in crime ever recorded. We've been there for about 5 months, and the numbers, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And thanks to our Memphis Safe Task, it's called Safe Task Force, alongside our efforts in Washington, D.C. And what we've done in Washington is amazing. We have Washington as a safe city now. It's been amazing. It's been, if you go back a year and a half, 2 years ago, Washington was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, let alone this country. And now we have a very safe city. And what they've done with all of the people working, many of the people standing right there, has been incredible. And now we're going to see all of our cities take a big step because of Mark Wayne. In 1 year, my administration, we've created the most secure border in the United States history and the largest drop in illegal immigration ever recorded, slashed the illegal fentanyl crossings on our border by 64%, and accomplished the largest decline in the murder rate in the history of our country, bringing it down to 1,900. That's before my father was born. My father was born a little bit after that. He wouldn't be happy mentioning this because he never liked talking about age. But he lived to be a ripe old age. But that's before my father was born.
You're listening in to President Donald Trump deliver remarks ahead of the formal swearing in of Mark Wayne Mullen as the brand new Department of Homeland Security Secretary. As soon as the soon-to-be official Secretary Mullen takes the podium, we're going to bring you back inside of the White House and inside of the Oval in particular. We are also monitoring another press conference, this one being led by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat. You heard President Donald Trump, a Republican, praising ICE's efforts and conduct under the leadership of his administration. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has been critical of ICE in these two simultaneous press conferences. We're going to listen in now to Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries for a moment and continue to monitor the ongoing activities inside the Oval and bring you back there as soon as Mark Wayne Mullen takes the podium.
The American people, they have failed to lower the high cost of living. Life is more expensive. They've broken our health care system. They're spending billions of dollars to drop bombs in the Middle East, won't spend a dime to make life more affordable for the American people, and they've been losing elections for the last 15 months. And so Republicans have concluded that we better try to jam this so-called Save America Act down the throats of the American people as part of our continuing schemes to rig the midterm election. We're not going to let it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. During the last mentioned that Republicans wouldn't be able to move forward without approval from the president. It was part of the argument that you and Leader Schumer made to have the meeting in the Oval Office with the president. Senate Republicans told me this morning that the president...
We're going to take you now back inside of the Oval Office, where Markwayne Mullin is about to be sworn in as the newest Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security.
Of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
And that I will bear true faith to allegiance and do the same.
And that I take this obligation freely.
And take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties of the office.
Discharge the duties of the office.
On which I am about to enter.
Which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Secretary.
Hey.
Thank you. I think it was the most nervous I've ever been. It just seems surreal being in the Oval Office and having the President of the United States speak so highly of me and then recognize my family and know my family by name. It's humbling, and I never take it for granted, but I made this very clear that I don't care what color your state is. I don't care if you're red or you're blue. At the end of the day, my job is to be Secretary of Homeland and to protect everybody the same, and we will do that. I'll fight every single day. Today I got the privilege of meeting so many of the employees at DHS. These employees have been there for 30 days without pay. And if you need anything to know their dedication to show up and still protect the homeland that you and I enjoy and the freedoms that we're experiencing, they're working with for free because of political politics. That's all I need to know. I told them, as you're fighting 365 days, understand I'll be fighting 365 days beside you. No one's going to outwork me, and I'm not going to let any of them outwork me. The President has entrusted me with this, and failure is not an option. And so thank you so much, Mr. President, for this opportunity. I won't let you down.
Thank you very much. I love that expression. No one's going to outwork me. That's a wrestler's expression, isn't it? Huh? That's a good wrestler's expression. Yes, please.
Mr. President, will the Secretary's replacement in the Senate support the SAVE Act and the use of the talking filibuster to get it through?
Well, it's not the SAVE Act. It's not called this. It's called the Save America Act. There's a big difference because the SAVE Act, nobody knows what that means. Save America means Save America. And I can't speak for him, but I would imagine that Markwayne, I didn't even ask him the question because who wouldn't support it? Voter ID with a picture. You want citizenship, proof of citizenship. Ideally, you want to end mail-in ballots because there's tremendous corruption. Then we added a couple of things, Markwayne, like I don't think being a great athlete and having a family of great athletes, they have produced great athletes in this family, all-American wrestlers. They especially like wrestling, by the way. And what about baseball? Do you play baseball? Anything? They like wrestling. But I don't think that you would say that his family, and I don't know this for a fact, and I shouldn't say it because I could get myself. Does anybody in your family want men to play in women's sports? I don't think so, Jim, right? I don't think so. I don't think. How would they do? Would they do good wrestling you? They would be in trouble? He said, yes, they'd be in big trouble. It's so crazy. So that would be one. And then we have a few others that we call them the best of Trump. But if you look at transgender mutilization of children, we don't want that. It's the mutilization of children. We don't want that. So generally speaking, I think I can answer that Markwayne would be very much in favor of what I'm in favor of. Would you say that's right, Mark? I can't think of too many things. He might be worse. He might be worse than me. That's my look at his wife is saying. That's right. But so, yeah, he's going to be great. Yeah.
Do you believe the Secretary will run DHS any differently than Kristi Noem did? What do you hope to see as his priorities?
Well, we had a good run. Look, we created the strongest border with the help of that man right there. Tom is so incredible, and he's going to be a big influence here, too. There's nobody more professional, nobody better. There's nobody better as a human being. You know, he looks tough, but he's got a good heart. but not too good. Don't make it too good. But, we had Tom. We have the safest border we've ever had. We have a lot of assets, but a lot of things we can do, and we're going to do. We have to get criminals out of our country that were allowed in by Biden. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, do you support what appears to be a merging agreement coming out of the Senate to reopen DHS?
Well, I'm going to look at it, and we're going to take a good, hard look at it. I want to support Republicans, and, sometimes it's awfully hard to get votes when you have Democrats that don't want to have voter ID. They don't want to have proof of citizenship. They don't want to do anything about men playing in women's sports. That's one of the items we put on, And I did that just because it's so popular. They say that's at least an 80-20 issue. No, it's about a 99-1. I don't think it's, what do you think, Pete? Do you think it's 80-20? Who's closer, 80-20 or 99-1?
Almost 100.
Yeah, I think 100 is really the, so I support that, and I support common sense.
Would you be comfortable with a deal that involves separating ICE funding from the DHS funding package in order to reopen?
Well, they're working on all of that. That's a detail that they'll explain later. Please.
Election integrity and DHS measures. Mr. President, since CISA falls under DHS, and given that many credible voices have raised concerns over its premature and possibly likely faulty 2020 election assessment, will you and Secretary Mullen implement reforms at CISA and at DHS to ensure full confidence in future elections, like in the upcoming?
We'll talk about it, pros and cons. Look, they used it to try and put me in prison, right? So I can't be thrilled with it. They used that very strongly, very illegally. The Democrats are thugs, and I don't want to say that. It would be nice to everyone get along, but it's a different country than it was years ago. It was very dangerous the way they used it, and they weaponized government. They used that to weaponize government. So.
And we're going to continue to monitor this press gaggle inside the Oval Office, but we do want to take you right now to a just beginning press conference, an update from the NTSB following that fatal airplane crash at LaGuardia Airport. Let's listen in now.
And so that's why we're here. We're here to prevent this from reoccurring, prevent this from happening again. And that's going to take some time. So with that, I will take questions. I ask that you raise your hand, state your name and your affiliation.
We're on the team with CNN. Given the fact that combining control positions has been a factor in previous incidents that you've investigated, including the DCA mid-air collision, what would you say now that you know positions were combined in the control tower cabin on Sunday night? Is that a safe practice? And does it make you upset that the positions were combined?
So there's a little bit of a difference. The question is on combining positions, because we saw the combining of positions in the mid-air collision that occurred near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport about a year ago. Our understanding right now, and again this is preliminary and subject to change, our understanding is that in the DCA mid-air there were procedures followed, a list like traffic volume, staffing available, training, workload that was considered in order to combine positions like the helicopter position and the local control position in DCA. In this situation for the midnight shift, it is standard operating procedure that they only have two on duty, and those two perform the duties of other controllers. That is our understanding right now. However, we're going to further dig into that as part of our investigation. Certainly, I can tell you that our air traffic control team has stated this is a problem, that this is a concern for them for years. That they have had this concern for quite a long time. I can understand it's a concern, especially if there's a heavy workload.
As the X did not work, and during the near collisions of 2023, you repeatedly said that ASDF should be at more airports and it could prevent collisions. How upset does it make you that it's clear that it did not work in this scenario?
Well, the question is, how upset does it make me that ASDX didn't work? Because we've repeatedly recommended that ASDX work. Well, in order for ASDX to work well, you have to know where ground vehicles and aircraft are. So in this case, that vehicle did not have a transponder. And it would have been helpful when you have a radar radar target. It does not provide you with the information that you need like it would for an aircraft as a controller. Yes.
Jackson Roscoe with Global News Canada. Is there any indication from the voice or data reporters that the pilots saw the fire truck or were aware that it was on runway?
Is there any indication from the CVR that the pilots saw the fire truck on the runway? I don't have information at this time on that. However, we are doing further analysis on our cockpit voice recorder. We have a group that we have formed that will analyze the CVR. And part of when they analyze is they will talk in the group about what they're hearing, what they've heard, any sort of background noises, and we'll provide a transcript, and then we'll release that publicly, so we'll know more then.
Chair Homendy, Andrew Siff from NBC4 New York, WNBC TV. With regard to the midnight shift, is it literally a midnight shift that you've expressed concerns about in the past, or is it sort of that later shift when there's typically less traffic at an airport? The reason I ask it is around this time, late at night on a Sunday night at LaGuardia, there's still lots of arrivals. To that degree, does that raise questions about the protocol and staffing here at this airport?
Well, so the question is about the shift, and are we just concerned about that shift in the past, or would there be other shifts? And does it make sense to have two controllers in the cab with such a busy airport, and this be sort of standard operating procedures and common practice across the national airspace? I think I restated it accurately and have now forgotten what you asked me. But on your standard operating procedure, on the standard operating procedures, look, LaGuardia is 900 flights, I believe, per day. That's pretty substantial. It's not the same as other airspace or other airports across the national airspace. That's certainly something we will look at as part of this investigation. How that would that make sense? You know, why would that make sense at LaGuardia? We will, that is part of our analysis in this investigation. And what was the other one?
Well, just as
so on the mid shift, we have identified the mid shift generally as concern in other investigations, largely due to fatigue, because it spans that time frame at your circadian low during the day when you're most fatigued.
Madam Chair.
Chairwoman
Yes.
Mariela Salgado from Univision in Moscow.
You've been hearing from the director of the NTSB, that's Jennifer Homendy, delivering an update on the NTSB's ongoing investigation into what led up to that deadly crash in New York late Sunday night between a jet and a vehicle, a first responder vehicle, on the tarmac. 2 pilots of that jet died. A number of other passengers and crew members were injured, some of them seriously. We're going to continue to bring you the latest information on the NTSB's ongoing investigation into what transpired there. Right now, we do want to turn to a conversation that's happening right here in Georgia and around the country, and it focuses on data centers, the growing, burgeoning industry that has taken root here in Georgia as one of the quickly becoming preeminent locations around the country for these data centers that power and really provide the technological backbone of this growing AI industry that is touching so much of our daily lives now. We want to bring in Connie DeSico, who is the legislative director at Georgia Conservation Voters. Connie, I know you and your organization are paying close attention to the data and the data center industry and some legislation making its way through the state capitol, correct?
Yes, thank you for having me. Yes, we are. We're watching this every single day.
And Connie, for folks who may not be totally familiar, what is the position of the Georgia Conservation Voters on data centers and on them coming to Georgia?
I'm glad you asked. Georgia Conservation Voters, we're not against data centers. we would like for data centers to be good neighbors. I mean, I do think that there's a way for data centers to help Georgia grow and participate in our economic growth here. We like to say that Georgia is open for business. There's a great way for data centers to participate in that growth and make it sustainable, even clean, and to participate and give back to our communities here.
I sense there is maybe a but at the end of that sentence somewhere, though.
You know, I have been saying for a while now that Georgians need to value Georgia in the same way that the data centers seem to be doing. We have a lot to offer here, and we don't really need to be giving this away for free. And we do this a lot, particularly with this industry. We have been giving away a lot to $1 billion corporate industry, and we don't need to be doing that. We have tax incentives to this industry that total $2.5 billion a year right now. Studies have shown, audits have shown that 70% of these data centers would have come without these tax incentives. They use tremendous amounts of water and energy. And this is at a time when a lot of Georgians are looking at their own bills, and they are having a hard time making their own ends meet. And these are also industries that we pay for their services. So we are subsidizing them in a multitude of ways that we don't really need to be doing. And I think that's the crux of the but that you're asking about. Georgia is a tremendous place. A lot of industries come here. We don't necessarily need to be giving away things.
Connie, let me ask you two questions here. I appreciate your answer. One about sort of the economics of this ongoing conversation, and another about the environmental aspects of the conversation. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those are sort of the two key pillars, or some of the key pillars of this conversation we've seen playing out at the state capitol, at local planning and zoning boards across the state. This is something that a lot of people are paying attention to. I want to ask you first about the environmental concerns that you raised, others have raised. I have also spoken with folks within the data center industry, and they argue that they, as an industry, have an economic incentive to make their data centers as environmentally efficient as possible. It just, they say, makes good business for them to be as efficient with the inputs that they're using, including power and water and other sources of energy. To those folks in the data center industry who say they're doing all they can to be good stewards and they're getting better and better, what would you say to them?
They are getting better and better, and that's part of the technology. I think transparency is the key here. And a lot of it needs to begin with the transparency, and we do need to know about the water and the energy. When you have a lot of them, that translates to grid resiliency. And that is also another piece that we also have to be keeping in mind. There's another larger piece to this too, which is the projections that are just within the next 5 years. And this has to do with Georgia Power asking for the 10 gigawatts, so 10,000 megawatts for this projected growth, the majority of which is for the data centers. That's the energy burden that we are talking about. And that folds back into making things more resilient, the transparency part of all of this, and where, if all of those contracts go unfulfilled, where does that energy burden land? It lands mostly on the ratepayers and not the data centers themselves. But to your point about all of these natural resources, to fulfill those contracts and that projection that Georgia Power is asking about, it requires bringing on more fossil fuels and things like coal plants that we were going to retire. That is a massive projection. And those natural resources, we had thought we had retired those. So those are now going to come back online. And I think that's a very big concern for organizations like ours.
Connie, we're a little short on time, but I do want to make sure I get to ask you these last two questions here. We talked about the environmental aspect of the conversation. Let's talk about the money. You've taken issue with some of the economic incentives and the tax incentives that have been given to the data center industry. Legislators, lawmakers, many times when they are voting for these kinds of tax incentives, they argue that those incentives bring jobs to local economies across the state and they boost economic development. And that reasoning, they say, makes the tax incentives worth it. What would you say to those lawmakers?
The devil's in the details. These are typically industries that bring less than a McDonald's in terms of jobs. They are buildings that don't house that many jobs once they're built. They do require a lot of construction up front. That might be 300 jobs, 500 jobs, but that's only to build them. And then after that, they really require very little maintenance or jobs once they're built.
Connie, this is maybe a tricky question to answer in 60 seconds, but we're up against a hard clock here. If you can wave the magic wand under the Gold Dome and get the lawmakers under the Gold Dome to pass legislation that would be the ideal legislation for Georgia conservation voters to address data centers, what would it look like?
Ratepayer protections that make the causers pay for what they're causing, that's something that would give so many Georgians a lot of assurance for these build-outs, and also transparency. That's foundational for a lot of environmental work and tells us what we can expect and gives you statewide, that starts statewide collaboration for a lot of the work that follows after this. And I think that is those two things working together really give you a good start for going forward.
Connie DeSico, the Legislative Director at Georgia Conservation Voters. Connie, thank you for your time and your perspective.
Thank you so much.
We're going to go to a quick break right now. We will be right back after this. Today, the Southern Poverty Law Center and a number of other partnered impact litigation groups are hosting a town hall focused on a lawsuit called Finn versus the Cobb Board of Education. It is a suit that stems back several years. It started in 2022. We're now in 2026. This event is happening today. We're joined now by Poi Winnichuckle with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Poi, thank you for making the time. Thanks for being here with us. Let's start with this. A question I suspect some people may be wondering. This lawsuit is years old. It was filed in 2022. Why this event today?
Zach, so thank you so much for having me on. Again, my name is Poi Winnichuckle. I'm a senior attorney with the Southern Poverty Law Center, an organization that works across the 5 Southeast states to advance racial justice, especially in Black and Brown communities. And, you know, to your question about why we're having this event today, even though the lawsuit was filed in 2022, lawsuits take a long time. And finally, we have some resolution in this lawsuit, and we wanted to bring the news, bring the local education, public education about voting issues into the limelight in Cobb County, especially during a high-profile election year when local elections, which are so important, might get lost in the mix.
So let's talk about this election then, Finn versus Cobb. The suit, the complaint alleged that Cobb County Board of Elections and the Cobb County School District alleged that the school board created a racially gerrymandered school board map ahead of the 2020 election, and it diminished voting power of Black and Latino voters, allegedly in violation of the 14th Amendment. That was the crux of the suit, right?
That's correct.
Where do things stand now? I know the district and the county defended their conduct. In their response to the complaint, they argued, they presented a number of defenses. One of them, they said, was that race was not a predominant factor in the drawing of the districts in question. Where does the suit stand now?
The lawsuit, as you mentioned, started in 2022, charging that the districts, 3 of the 7 school board districts in Cobb County were racially gerrymandered. What that means is that voters of color, Black and Latino voters that we talked about in the complaint for the litigation, didn't have as much voting power as their white neighbors. And that's a violation of the U.S. Constitution. We got a ruling, SPLC and our fellow attorneys and plaintiffs who were family members, students, community advocates, and community rights organizations won a motion in the court where the court said we had a high likelihood of success to show that those 3 districts were in fact racially gerrymandered. And like many cases, the cases wind up and down through the appeals court. And ultimately, as a result of that ruling, in 2024, the state legislature passed a new map. But unfortunately, the plaintiffs were not able to respond through the court proceedings to say whether or not that map was better, was worse. But what we can say is that it's now up to voters under this new map to make sure that they understand what's going on, what happened in the lawsuit, and understand it in the context of what's happening in their own communities and their own experiences that they have every single day with the Cobb County schools. That spans a number of years back, including the anti-mask mandates, the racial discrimination allegations that have mired the school district for several years, which indicated to us there was a representational problem and caused us to bring the suit in the first place. And that's what this whole event tonight at 6 p.m. at the Smyrna Community Center is all about, to learn about this lawsuit, the results, what has happened in Cobb County over the last several years that has culminated in this event, to encourage people to be armed with information when they head to the polls this year.
Let's talk about that new map. As you referenced, these lawsuits, they tend to take a lot of time. They go up and down the appellate process in the federal court system. After some time before the appellate courts, I know that on September 3rd of last year, judgment was entered in favor of the defendants. That was the school board. The suit was dismissed as moot in light of that law that you referenced that was passed. So it was Senate Bill 338 that redrew and impacted these maps. For people who are at this event tonight, we're short on time, but I am sure they will ask you at some point, okay, what's the takeaway of these new maps? What should I know if I am a Cobb County voter? To them, you would say what?
I would say that the lawsuit ushered in this new legislation, and even though the lawsuit plaintiffs were not able to respond in the lawsuit, what we thought about these maps. These are new maps that we were able to get as a result of the lawsuit itself, and now it's up to voters to come with their information, to learn more about what is happening in their communities, and to really understand the importance of local races, which can be pretty tight, and to exercise their voice and their power to and right to vote by casting a ballot in their local elections and school board elections this year.
Poi Winnechuckle with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Poi, thank you very much. That event coming up tonight at 6 o'clock. Thank you for your time and your perspective. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Zach. Have a good one.
You're looking now on your screen, or you will be in just a moment. There we go. This is a live look, right, guys? This is a live look at the main checkpoint at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. That's a nice picture. That is a good-looking picture of the main checkpoint. It's been looking a little ugly the last couple days with long lines stretching way out of those, the barriers and the maze that you walk through. Right now, I don't have an exact map up right now of specific times, but this looks like a much, much, much shorter wait time than we have been seeing at Atlanta's and the world's busiest airport over the last few days. We will have a live report from the airport coming up in just a few minutes. Right now, we're headed to break. We'll be right back. A Georgia rodeo star is breaking barriers and carving his own path through a sport that, I mean, this is as Georgia as it gets. And our own Caitlin Ross brings us this story, joins us now. You got rodeo. You've got somebody who's breaking barriers. We've got you here in the 11Alive Plus Streaming Center. Caitlin, this is a really special story.
It's really fantastic. I love Marvin the Cowboy so much. He is such an incredible guy, so passionate about what he does. And if you just watch his story, you can tell the difference he's making for other people in the state.
All right, putting the saddle on, boy, okay?
Saddling up isn't just routine for Marvin Dugan. It's the moment everything starts to feel possible.
The excitement, the adrenaline rush, my fans cheer me on.
When he climbs onto Hercules, he's focused,
steady.
Kiss and kick, come on.
Completely at home.
I know it's time to go to work, and it's time to get serious and do what I gotta do.
Out in the arena, Marvin isn't thinking about limitations.
Turn. Good, Marvin, good.
He's thinking about the ride, the rhythm, and the people cheering him on.
Marvin. Love Marvin. Marvin has big passion, big faith, big dreams, and he has a big heart.
For a long time,
good, ain't it?
There wasn't a space for him to compete like this.
Past it, heels down.
No division that fit, no lane that felt like his.
Marvin didn't have anywhere to compete, and we wanted him to have an opportunity to show his skills.
The special needs division of Say Rodeo started with Marvin.
Yay! Good job!
And for his family, it finally gave Marvin what he had been searching for.
He just really wanted something that was his, where he could win awards, he could be recognized, and he just hadn't had that in his life.
Come on, push past, push past.
Marvin's life hasn't been an easy ride. Born with an intellectual disability,
slide, horn.
Marvin was in 13 different foster homes before he turned 8, before he was adopted by the Dugans.
He is really a special and unique man. He deserves to be celebrated. One of the most positive people I know.
Legs, flank.
Marvin is now using his gift to help others.
Now keep that inside hand up.
Visiting schools and encouraging kids with special needs.
Tight, 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 hands up, stand up.
To see what's possible for themselves.
There you go.
My heart for God, sharing my faith with people, from going to schools and teaching kids about what I do. Go, go, go.
All the way, all the way.
And when he rides, he's showing them something even more powerful than words.
That whatever they put their mind to, they can do it.
Hands forward, kiss and kick.
Out here, it's not about limits. It's where Marvin belongs.
Wow. What a story. What a remarkable young man.
Yeah, he's really awesome. And he just has so much passion for the sport, which I think is so cool. He brings his rodeo rope out when he goes to visit schools, so the kids who might not be able to get out in the arena can touch the rope and kind of get a feel for what rodeo is like. And he really wants to bring that excitement to other kids and let them know that they can do it too.
You know what I mean, there's a lot that stood out to me in that piece, but what stood out to me the most, you're there, you're a reporter, there's a photographer there, he's going to be on television. The most excited I saw him in that whole piece was when he was talking about the kids he gets to share with. It was not about him, it was about being able to share that passion that is so evident.
Yeah, and what I think is so cool about Marvin is he makes coloring books for these kids.
Wow.
So he creates coloring books of his experiences in the rodeo, and then when he goes to those schools to talk to kids, he hands them out so the kids can really get a feel for what it's like and kind of create their own picture of what rodeo could look like for them.
There's so much positivity, too. I mean, as you shared in that story, he has gone through a lot. 13 foster homes before the age of 8 years old, but so much positivity and optimism that just came through like a sunburst in that story. Every time I saw him on screen, you could just feel it.
Oh, I love that description. Yeah, his mom was like that too. She was so positive. They have a blended family of children, mostly adopted from foster care, who have special needs. And Marvin is actually part of a sibling group that they adopted. So there are multiple kids in their family from this same sibling group who all have special needs. And she wants to really make them all feel unique and individual and important. So she wanted them all to find their thing. And for Marvin, you know, he played basketball with the Special Olympics, he tried out soccer, but he really never found a spot that felt like his own until he tried rodeo. And then he was like, giddy up, like, this is for me, I want to do this.
I was going to ask you, because, I mean, look, agriculture is the number one industry in Georgia. We are a proud agricultural state, but rodeo, not as commonplace as, you know, basketball or soccer or football or baseball. There he is doing his thing, and his coach there too.
Oh,
you
she's
could
amazing.
Just feel the pride that she had seeing him go out there and do what is really physical, athletic work to make that look as easy as he made it.
Yeah, and she's not taking it easy on him, which I also thought was pretty cool. She's like, you know, I'm going to make sure that he gets out there and he does it right and he's roping the goat right and all this new stuff that I learned. I didn't know much about rodeo before I went into this.
You know more now.
I do know more now. And she really wants it to be an authentic experience for him. So when Marvin came into the program, there was not a space for Marvin to compete. So he could ride with the rodeo, but he didn't have a competition division. And that's when Shell, his co-chief you saw there on the screen, she was like, why don't we create one? Why don't we build this for Marvin? And so they built it with Marvin in mind, but now they're pulling in other kids with special needs. So they have riders with autism, riders with Down syndrome, and they craft the category to the kids' abilities. So they create these different competitions based on what the kids can do. So it's all about leaning into their ability and really giving them a space to shine.
We are a little short on time, but I want to make sure I ask you this question. Did Marvin say anything about his reaction to seeing this category of rodeo expand in no small part because of his efforts and his willingness really to go out there and kind of break the barrier and be the first?
Yeah, he is so excited about it. He talks about his fans who are cheering him on as soon as he walks outside. He has this little dance that he does. It's like a touchdown dance when he goes out into the rodeo. And so he gets it. He really understands that he has opened up a world for a lot of kids who just want to find a place to belong. And for Marvin and a lot of kids like him, the rodeo is it.
A path breaker and a rodeo star. Hats off to Marvin and to our Caitlin Ross, as always, for bringing us these excellent and inspirational and important stories.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We will be right back after this. All right, the spring weather is here, but maybe a little chillier this morning. Danielle Moss, meteorologist, the official, the expert, is here to correct my very layman of layman's forecast there. But it was a little nippy when I went out this morning.
It was about 15 to 20 degrees cooler, Zach, than what we've had this weekend. In fact, this weekend we had 3 80-degree days in a row. So it was nice, it was warm, it was sunny, and now we're looking at cooler temperatures. So it's one of those times where we're on a temperature roller coaster. We are definitely much cooler today. We're going to be even cooler tomorrow, then back into the 80s as we head into your Thursday and Friday. But look how beautiful it is. Here's a look at our tower camera right now. This is live into Cobb County. A beautiful, sunny, clear sky, but it's cool out there. It's 67 degrees. There's an 8-mile-an-hour wind, and these cooler temperatures are going to continue. To take a look at the temperatures across the metro area, it's 61 in Winder, 65 in Carrollton, and around 65 degrees in Dallas. So we're definitely feeling the chill. Gainesville right now, 20 degrees cooler than what they were this time yesterday. The temperatures had already started falling in northwest Georgia. That's why they are just a smidge warmer than what they were. As we take a look in the next 12 hours, it is definitely going to be a cloudy evening. We'll have some clouds building in. This is all a part of a dry cold front that's coming through and dropping our temperatures, not really bringing us much rain though, which is okay. We all love the sunshine, but we do desperately need the rain. The lack of rain, the winds, that is leading to another day of high fire danger. This is not the same as what we saw yesterday. Yesterday was an elevated risk. High fire danger is really a special weather statement from the National Weather Service. It just says, hey, it's dry outside. It's windy outside. You might not need to burn today. And you can see all of Metro Atlanta included in that and all of North Georgia as well. The winds are also not really helping with that elevated pollen count. In fact, as the winds gust, it is kicking up more pollen, making our pollen numbers very high. Yesterday, we had a 6,000 roughly pollen count day, and that was the 16th highest day on record. Today,
16th on record?
On record.
And the entirety of recorded history?
Yes, 35 years, 36 years roughly.
That's a lot of pollen. I shudder to interrupt your forecast, but that I couldn't remain silent.
Yes.
Carry on, it's back to you.
Well, today is not much better, Zach. 5,000. No.
That's why I spent a lot of time sneezing all weekend and today as well.
It is. In fact, I have a great mobile short posted about what you need to do to help with your allergy symptoms. Now, I must say that I do not suffer from allergies myself.
You're bragging here a little bit.
I have not tested these theories, but according to Atlanta Allergy, they are some really good tips.
I'll be watching that video
yes.
As soon as we get off air here. I need the help.
But we do need rain. Rain will help us all because I do not like the pollen on my car. Unfortunately, we're not going to be seeing much rain. But look at the shot there in Decatur. It's absolutely gorgeous outside right now. And the temperatures are matching it. It is a little bit warmer than we anticipated today, but we are still cooler. Our highs yesterday were near 81, 82 degrees, and now we're into the 60s. Make sure you grab a light jacket if you haven't been out the house just yet, and as you go into this evening because our temperatures will be falling. 60s for the next 2 days, but then we'll start to see things getting a little bit better. I talked about this being a dry cold front. Precipitation chances are low, but they are not at a 0. And as we take a look at our forecast track, we'll have some increased cloud cover overnight tonight for your Wednesday. That's going to keep our temperatures cool. We'll have some partly cloudy skies for your Thursday, and then we'll warm back up into the upper 70s, maybe even some low 80s. Definitely the low 80s for your Friday. Right now, when we talk about spotty shower chances, this is exactly what you can expect. Let's look at our current satellite and radar. We have some cloud cover. This is all due to that dry cold front. We have a few of them coming this week, and you can see the very light green specks on your screen. Those are your isolated shower chances. Rainfall in the next 7 days, we're not even expecting to accumulate half of an inch, and that has just continued to back off. So rain chances are very minimum. We do need that rain. Our temperatures are cooler, so it'll be a nice week as far as that is concerned, but it's the spring. We do need rain because we do not want to see these high fire danger days to continue. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, temperatures into the 60s once again. Your 3-day forecast shows that we'll be back into the 80s as we head to your Thursday and Friday. And it looks like we'll be starting another warming trend as we head into this time next week. So those temperatures will be climbing once again. Here's a look at that 7-day forecast for you. 61 degrees for tomorrow. Back into the 80s to wrap up the work week, but then we'll be back into the 60s as we head into your Saturday and Sunday. And then we'll be having some warmer temperatures to start next week. So pretty much just flip-flopping. Last week, we ended the week on warmer temperatures and had warmer temperatures for the weekend, but now we're looking at cooler for the weekend, warmer for the beginning of the week. I know. This is not
Gabby's
good.
giving the thumbs down on that, but you know what? If you got to start the work week, you got to go, you wake up in the morning on Monday. Some folks, not me. Sometimes I do. But you think, oh my goodness, I got to go to work. At least if you can walk out the door and it be, nice. Getting nice. I saw it was like 40 something on Monday, but it will get warmer.
It will get warmer. Yes, it will get warmer for sure.
This is why we leave the forecast to the professionals. We do want to switch gears though, Gabby and Danielle, if we're good with this, to a little bit of a much more serious topic here, because Danielle, in addition to being our expert in all things meteorology, you also worked as a flight attendant.
I did, yes.
And you were based at LaGuardia.
Yes, for a year.
So you know very well the comings and goings, the situation at that airport, a very busy airport, one of the major hubs in the New York area. And unfortunately, as you see on your screen right now, the site of a deadly crash that took place Sunday night. You're looking at a live image right now from the tarmac. That Air Canada jet, operated by Jazz Aviation, struck a Port Authority vehicle as the jet was landing Sunday night. The jet hit a Port Authority vehicle that was on the tarmac. The pilot and the co-pilot of that jet were killed. 41 people were injured. More than 30 of them have since been released, but some are seriously injured. The NTSB and other officials continue to investigate exactly what led up to and what caused this collision between the vehicle on the ground and the Air Canada jet operated by Jazz Aviation that was landing on that tarmac. Danielle, you've flown in and out of LaGuardia countless times as a member of a crew, and you actually served on the same kind of jet, a Bombardier 900, that was, according to NBC, that jet that we saw that crashed.
Exactly.
What kinds of trainings and preparations do the flight crews go through for handling an emergency situation like this? Obviously, you had to get all those passengers out of the jet once it was on the ground.
Yes, extensive. All of our training, despite what people think, we use all of our training for any kind of emergency. And the most dangerous time for you to fly is before takeoff and before landing, not in the air, because that is where human error is most likely. And so when we're talking about any of these accidents and any of these unfortunate events, it's usually during takeoff or landing. And when we go through training, they train you for every little thing, but you never know what happens until you're in that situation. In fact, I was reading some about this crash, and they even said that one of the flight attendants, they found her in her jump seat still on the outside of the plane. That's not something that we go through in training, obviously.
And she was seriously injured,
Yes.
but according to an interview with one of her family members with the Associated Press, and I believe NBC News as well, she's expected to recover and some
Yes.
broken limbs, but one of her family members said she's got a guardian angel somewhere to
Yes.
survive that.
Exactly. And they teach you even how to do something if there's smoke in the cabin. They teach you how to get people off of the plane if there is fire, active fire, or if you are having to evacuate people during, some people's worst days of their lives. If you think back to the crash that happened in Boston, I actually know a passenger who was on that plane, and she said that the flight attendant was doing her best job to get people out in an orderly fashion, but people don't listen, and so she ended up getting seriously hurt too. And they tell us in training, some of those flight attendants were seriously hurt just trying to evacuate the plane. In fact, they weren't hurt during the crash, but they were hurt while people were evacuating. So there's several different scenarios that you have to go through as a flight attendant to, number one, the passenger safety is the main focus. And so you are taught how to handle anything from CPR, even live birth. Anything that can happen on the ground can happen in the air, so you have to be prepared to handle that.
Danielle, in the last couple minutes that we have here, for folks who maybe don't fly a lot, or for folks who maybe primarily fly out of Atlanta and they don't go to New York, describe what a typical day at LaGuardia and on its taxiways and its tarmacs look like.
Very busy. We are the world's busiest airport, but in LaGuardia, the way that things are set up, because there's so many airlines that fly out of there are so many different construction projects that are going on. On the tarmac, it is very busy. In fact, if you've never been, sometimes they will bus passengers from the terminal to the tarmac to have them load on planes on the tarmac. So you have buses that have passengers on board. You have buses that are taking passengers from like the Delta terminal to the United terminal. And now that we're learning more about this crash, we know that that fire truck was actually on the way to the United terminal, which is in a different area. So there is a lot going on that tarmac, more than what we see here in Metro Atlanta. And so there's a lot of different moving parts. And then you have to talk about all the planes coming in. And if you've ever flown out of LaGuardia, you also know that it's always a delay. There's always delayed because they have to time the planes out perfectly, because they're also competing with JFK. And because the runways are so limited at LaGuardia, you have to time out things absolutely perfect. There's very little room for error, unfortunately, in LaGuardia.
And then not too far away, too, you've got Newark.
Yes.
It is an extremely busy portion of the nation's airspace.
Yes.
Horrible what transpired Sunday night. Hoping for recovery for everybody who is currently hospitalized. We know NTSB is going to continue to investigate this as they investigate every crash of this type. Danielle, thank you for your perspective and your insight. This is really helpful. We really appreciate it.
Can I add one thing, Zach?
Yes, please.
So one of the things that I like to tell people is that always leave your seatbelt on. People, you land and you think, okay, we've made it, we're safe. You have to keep your seatbelt on. And people think, why don't they turn off the seatbelt sign until we get to the gate? It's because anything can happen. Like I said, the most dangerous part of flying is right before you take off and right when you land, because that is when human error is involved. You never know what can happen, just like when we're riding in a car and there's a fender bender. Most accidents in your car happen right around the corner from your house because you've gotten comfortable. Same idea here. You have to stay in that seatbelt. You have to listen to your flight crew, because that is most important in an emergency situation. We don't say leave your bags behind just because we want you to not have them as you jump out. On that CRJ 900, there's no slide. There's no steps. So you have to know how to get off of that plane. And as you saw from that video, it's tilted up. So the flight attendants would have had to make very rational decisions, quick decisions on how to get people off that plane. So my advice to people, always wear your seatbelt when that seatbelt sign is on.
Danielle Moss, meteorologist and also flight attendant, aware of many hats and expertises. Thank you for this perspective.
Yes.
We want to go now to a live look at Hartsfield-Jackson right here in Atlanta. Tarmacs are clear and flights are moving, but the challenge in Atlanta and at many other airports around the country is one at the TSA check-in lines. You're looking at a live webpage right now. This is Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International's advisory on how long TSA security wait times are. The website has been effectively stuck like this for, Gabby, the better part of the last day or so? It shows that this airport is advising people to arrive at least 4 hours or more ahead of a domestic or an international flight, and that is because TSA checkpoint wait times have been ballooning in recent days, as we are now well over a month into this ongoing partial government shutdown impacting the Department of Homeland Security's funding, and in particular the funding of TSA security employees who have been working without pay now for a number of weeks. Our Galat Malamed is live at the airport. Galat, you have been keeping a close eye on the lines, the wait time, and I understand that just in the last hour or two you spoke with a couple members of the TSA union. What are you learning today?
Yeah, they came out with a really strong message today. We heard from the president of the American Federation of Government Employees, the union that represents TSA workers across the country. We also heard from our local representative here at Hartsfield-Jackson, and the message is the time is now to pay these TSA officers. The national president even calling this a disgrace and an embarrassment. Right now at the airport, the good news for travelers at least is that there's barely a line. Things are moving very smoothly. It's as if it was any other day, but we know earlier today, yesterday and Sunday, that was certainly not the case, with lines snaking throughout baggage claim, even going outside the airport. So that is why airport officials want people to arrive here at least 4 hours early. And something interesting, Zach, you mentioned that on the website, we can't even find out what the wait times are. The system essentially does not work. Yesterday, when we spoke to the general manager of the airport, he actually said that essentially the system wasn't really built to track some of these times. There was no way for them to get an accurate gauge, so that's why those numbers weren't up online, because the system was meant to, if the line ends here, know that the line is up to here and how long that would take. But if a line is outside the airport, if a line is in baggage claim, the system doesn't know that. And that's why they decided this is too confusing for passengers, so we're not going to put those times up on the website.
Maybe too confusing for passengers, definitely too confusing for me at times, it feels like, and for others who are monitoring the situation there and thinking about getting on a flight or not. I know they've been seeing at times these gargantuan lines stretching way out to the food halls and elsewhere there, and other times, like right now, Galat, seeing behind you what looks like a pretty easy day to get through, or at least an easy period to get through the checkpoint. Have you gotten a sense of why there's so much oscillation between really busy periods and really pretty easy, breezy periods?
Well, in general, today, is a Tuesday, and a travel expert I spoke to yesterday, and both the local union president said Tuesdays are slower days. So even in normal times, a Tuesday would be slower than a Monday and a Sunday, which both the local union president and the travel expert I spoke to said are some of the busiest days at airports. So that could certainly be part of it. Also, when I spoke to a travel expert yesterday, he said midday is generally the best time to fly. Early mornings are really bad, and evenings are really bad, so that could also be playing into this as well.
And Galat, I know that you have spoken with some leaders of that TSA union. Those TSA employees have been working without pay since February 14th. We're well over a month into this partial government shutdown. What kind of impact is it having, according to those union leaders, on their union members who still have bills to pay?
Well, one of the most obvious impacts that travelers can certainly see is that people are calling out sick. They're not being paid. Maybe they don't have enough money for gas in their cars, for childcare. So we know some of the latest numbers that we've received from TSA is about 37% of officers here calling out, which is one of the higher numbers for major airports across the country. They also spoke about the impact of the most recent federal shutdown before this one. They were saying, some of the employees had to take out loans perhaps because they weren't getting paid during that shutdown. So not only do they have their normal bills now, but perhaps they still have loans that they still have to pay from the last shutdown. So it's really a compounding issue because that last shutdown was not that long ago.
Our Galat Malamed live at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, keeping a close eye on those TSA checkpoint times. Galat, thank you very much.
Thanks,
We're going to
Zach.
turn now to this. We are joined in the 11Alive Plus streaming studio by Chase Howell. Chase, you were monitoring court proceedings earlier today. This is the latest development in a case that you have been following, our whole newsroom has been following closely. It is the case of the killing of young Zoe Price, who was killed about a month ago here in Atlanta. Bring us up to speed on this case and what happened earlier today in court.
So, bring it to speed, they had a preliminary hearing today, meaning they were just talking about all the evidence that they had, not all of it, but some of it, as to why they brought this probable cause out. And so basically today, Stephen Richardson and Preston Smith were in the courtroom today talking with the judge and just kind of laying out everything between the state and the defense. And basically, we kind of got some more insight into what happened that night she was killed, 7-year-old Zoe Price. And I think we have that story lined up, so we can take it if you want.
Happy birthday to you. Zoe Price, a 7-year-old girl with so much life to live, was shot and killed not too long after her birthday. Police say she died after Preston Smith and Stephen Richardson drove past her house and shot it up last month. In court Tuesday, a detective who took the stand during their preliminary hearing says it all started from an argument between Zoe's brother and Smith over a group FaceTime call. He says the fight began either over $100 or Zoe's brother disrespecting Smith's mom based on witness statements and cell phone data. But that's not all he says ties both Smith and Richardson to the scene. He testified doorbell video from the Price's home and security video show the suspects pull up in Price's car and start shooting. And in an interview with the detective, he alleges Richardson admitted to shooting at the house. But his attorney argues there's no proof and that his client merely shot at the ground. Richardson's attorney also asked the judge not to find probable cause because he was interviewed without a parent or advocate. Richardson is 17 and considered a minor. But the judge ultimately sided with the state, finding probable cause to indict both him and Smith. In Atlanta, Chase Howell, 11Alive News.
Yeah, so something else I found interesting today when the defense, Richardson's attorney, was talking with the judge was he was trying to say, look, all this evidence that you're bringing before the court right now, according to the state, is all statement-based. And as you know, Zach, you studied law for a little bit. I mean, you talk about hearsay. You often hear that, that's hearsay. Get rid of it or whatever. What they say, strike the record. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But it's basically they were talking about how hearsay is permissible in a preliminary hearing, but not in trial. And so I thought that was interesting. And even though he was like, hey, judge, I don't want you to find probable cause in this, he was like, well, you may be right, but guess what? Hearsay is allowed and we're going to allow it.
And so this case now, it goes before a grand jury. That's going to be the next step of this. There is typically in these preliminary hearings the question of bond. But today, do you know what the outcome of that was for these two suspects?
So Richardson did not have a bond hearing. As far as Smith, they did request it, but then withdrew it at that bond hearing. Why, I couldn't really hear because it's hard to hear in a courtroom, as some of us know, but that was interesting as well. I did talk to Zoe's mom, along with her aunts. I was with them last Friday as well and just did a walk with them for anti-violence that Crystal Drake threw, who owns Crescent City. So we got to take a walk and just kind of walk for all the kids that have been dying due to violence.
This is the beginning in the long march through the justice system in the case against these two suspects accused of being involved in the death of 7-year-old Zoe Price. That next step is going to be the grand jury.
It will be. So now they're facing, both of them combined, well, I should say this. Smith is facing 14 charges. Richardson is facing a 15th for being under the age of 18 and possessing a firearm. And I will say this, something I'm looking into right now is that there was a third person in the car that night that they allegedly drove up past that house, shot it up, and killed Zoe Price. So I don't want to say his name right now because I'm looking into that as to where is he in all this.
Do you know if police are investigating that?
The detective who was on scene, the lead detective who took the stand today, is the one who brought it up.
Like we said, this is the beginning of this march through the justice system. The grand jury process comes next, and that is when prosecutors will present their evidence before a panel of grand jurors, and they will choose to either indict or not. It is up to the grand jury to determine if there's probable cause to indict, and then it goes over to Superior Court, and that is when the process continues. This is the beginning. We know, Chase, you're going to be following it all the way through. Chase Howell, thank you as always.
Thanks.
We're going to go to a quick break right now. We'll be right back after this. As we continue through the month of March and Women's History Month, we want to turn now to April Reed Cruz with the Reed Financial Group with some tips on how to build financial confidence. April, thank you for your time. Can you hear us okay?
I can, yes, thank you.
Well, let's talk about this right off the start here. What kinds of barriers to financial confidence or challenges in financial issues do women sometimes face?
Well, first, I'd like to acknowledge how far we've come in a relatively short period of time, because sometimes it's easy to forget that perspective. Women had to have a male co-signer on loans until the middle of the 1970s. So we have certainly come a very long way in a relatively short period of time. But some of those barriers that still exist are that often the finances are delegated to the male in the household. It's just the gender role assignments in the household that go back decades. Women often have the motherhood penalty, as it's called, where you perhaps take time out of the workforce to take care of young children, or maybe you're moving back to part-time instead of full-time work. They're often also more likely to be caregivers for elderly parents. So that can be additional time out of the workforce. And some of these could be considered factors that contribute to the gender pay gap that still exists today as well.
To somebody who maybe is listening to that answer and they're nodding their heads along thinking, hey, that applies to me, what would you say to them? What advice would you give?
It really starts with education, because if we look at from a financial literacy perspective, women do still lag behind financial literacy. There are a lot of studies that prove this. So starting to spend some time, you can choose your topic, whatever is maybe the biggest concern to you, the area that you feel like you can tackle the easiest, whatever method works best for you. But start somewhere. Start listening to perhaps some podcasts. Maybe there's a YouTube channel. Reed Financial Group puts YouTube videos out all the time. We try to keep those very brief, to the point, relevant topics, so that you can break this down into a digestible format and really start to build your knowledge. And from there, really start to become a part of your finances. Whether you're married or whether you're single, be accountable to yourself and assess where you are. Because if we're not looking very carefully at what we're spending, where we're contributing, and what our goals, our measurable and specific goals are for the future, it's very difficult to achieve our goals.
You mentioned the first step is getting a little more educated, finding some resources, finding some places to gather new information. You referenced some podcasts, some YouTube elements. I know Reed Financial has a YouTube page you just pointed out. What other sources of information out there? Because you and I both know if I go to Google, if I go to TikTok search, if I go anywhere on the internet and search financial advice, I'm going to find no shortage of advice, but a pretty wide spectrum of the quality of that advice. So where can someone go to find good, financially sound advice, particularly for maybe beginners?
I really like to look at books that have become bestsellers. I think that's a really good starting point if you're not familiar with podcasts or YouTube channels and maybe you're looking to dive a bit deeper. I was a contributor recently to Financial Trendsetters 3. It's the third of its iteration, really empowering women and looking holistically at how women can view and be an active participant in their finances. That's a great resource. Look up other publications that have bestseller status, and ratings of advisors. If you're looking for a financial advisor, make sure that you look for good, strong reviews, and broker checks are another area where you can really make sure that you're working with someone who is a fiduciary, somebody who has a clean track record, and someone who isn't a jack of all trades and isn't a true expert.
And April, part of this too, you pointed out, is sometimes the situation at home where gender roles contribute, and sometimes the male at home is the one kind of in charge of the money situation. For someone who's watching along and is in that situation and they want to change that up, what advice would you give to women to start to have that conversation?
We encourage our clients who are married, and especially where the male has handled the finances, to just start attending meetings. Even if you're not comfortable yet with asking questions or being an active participant, you can really start to learn a lot when you attend that type of meeting. Start having household meetings on a scheduled basis where you look at your finances together, know what your emergency reserves are, know how to log into all of your accounts, understand what you're contributing and what those financial goals are, and really make sure that you're in frequent communication about that, because heaven forbid something happens to the spouse who is handling the finances, it will be a lot more stressful to try to navigate all of those moving parts if you haven't been at least somewhat of an active participant prior.
All right, April Reed Cruz with Reed Financial Group. April, thank you for your perspective and your time. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me again.
We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Well, it is technically still the NFL offseason. There really is never a slow day in the NFL, and never a slow day in Atlanta, a great sports city, and never a slow day for the Falcons, who are always staying busy. Maria Martin joins us right now. Maria, your job is to stay on top of all of this and keep track of it. It is a busy job.
I thought you were going to say never a slow day in Maria Martin's life. Because I was going to say
I sit next to her. It's never a slow day for Maria either.
No, truly, I was going to endorse that, put it as an Instagram reel. It's true. It's
I missed
never.
my moment. I missed my Instagram reel
you
moment
did.
here.
Can you start over? Like,
yeah,
what are
let's
we
just
doing?
run this back. Run the commercial.
Just kidding. I'm totally kidding. No, you're right though, Zach. You know, NFL offseason doesn't really exist. It's never been that way. But I think the good good news is Falcons fans can now hear from one of their new quarterbacks. We'll get to maybe another new face that's now entered the chat as of today. But Tua Tagovailoa talking to us for the very first time from his off-season home in the Bahamas. So he's spending time there, getting ready for the upcoming season. One really striking thing about the conversation with Tua this morning was that it is a breath of fresh air for him. He does feel very excited, and you could just tell, because anytime we brought up, hey, what do you think about this offense? What do you think about Atlanta? There is an overall sense of newness for Tua. He's very excited to turn the page from what happened in Miami, which he didn't really go too much in. We can talk all about that, and just kind of go into a new chapter for Tua that will look hopefully very good for him. I'm talking for Tua, not for Michael Penix Jr., because remember, this is a wide open quarterback competition, according to the new general manager, Ian Cunningham. It's about to get spicy.
And you get into exactly what I wanted to ask you about. Take us inside of this QB room that has seemingly a lot of moving parts right now.
Yeah, it looks totally different than it did last year, right? And I think one of the best things that Tua talked about was what his synergy and relationship will look like with Michael Penix Jr. He was asked several times, what's that approach going to be with a quarterback like that? You're coming in, you're on a 1-year contract, and you've got a guy who was drafted in the first round, who is supposed to be the future of this franchise. What's that going to look like for you? And he said, anywhere is a competition in the NFL. He understands, and Tua is no stranger to competition. Look what happened to him in Alabama. He was a part of perhaps the best quarterback room in the history of college football. You had Tua Tagovailoa, you had Jalen Hurts, and you had Mac Jones. And all of them are competing with one another. And that's a very loaded quarterback room. He is not a stranger to this. He's been through it before. He knows how to handle that well. He said that he wants to get better by helping Michael and vice versa. He wants them to learn from each other while also competing. So I think it's important that he address that. He has a really good relationship, actually, with parts of the Michael Penix Jr. family. And so I think it is really important to remember that it is a competition always in the NFL. He's very cognizant of that, and you don't really sign up to do this job unless you want to compete.
You talk about that legendary Alabama QB room.
Yeah.
So much of making that competition work for the rest of the team is good coaching and being able to channel that energy that can come out of that really fierce competition. The Falcons are in a somewhat different position than Alabama was under Nick Saban.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of coaching changes. How much pressure or opportunity, depending on how you see it, is on the coaching staff for the Falcons to make sure that this competition is a productive one for the whole team?
I think it's opportunity because this team looks completely different than it did last year, and especially for Tua Tagovailoa. He already mentioned that he has talked to both Tommy Rees, who's the new offensive coordinator for the Falcons, and new head coach Kevin Stefanski about what this offense will look like for them. He's already gotten on the phone with them. He's very excited about what they're pitching, and he said it will look different than how they ran things down in Miami, which is exactly what Tua is looking for. He said he was never going to go to a team where he was outright named the starter because that's not really how it works in the NFL either. He's excited about that aspect of it, excited about the fact that what he says, the offense will be intentional, meaning there will be a reason for everything. He took that away from many of his conversations with Tommy Rees and Kevin Stefanski, and that's very intriguing to Tua. And look, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think that he enters probably the best pieces on offense that he's had in his career in the NFL so far. So if you're Tua, you're certainly excited about that. And I know Falcons coaches, what an opportunity that is to have a veteran QB on a 1-year deal who feels the fire to his feet. When you've got a 1-year contract and you want to start in the NFL, got to make the most of your opportunity. And then right behind you, a very talented quarterback who we hope gets healthy and ramps up that competition, Michael Penix Jr. So I see it as opportunity.
We're talking about two quarterbacks in the room right now. Is it going to stay that way, or are the Falcons potentially looking at bringing somebody else in as well to round out that room?
Great question. I was on the stream, so basically I've been here all day. I was on the stream this morning.
Welcome back.
Thank
we
you.
love having you here.
No, but I was on the stream this morning, Zach, and I said I don't think that the Falcons are going to keep two quarterbacks for very long, meaning you got to add somebody else, especially as we get closer to OTAs, and it seems like they've done that. According to a bunch of different reports, Trevor Siemian is now going to enter that quarterback room. So this is very interesting. He's a former 7th-round pick. He was with the Tennessee Titans last year. Did not play any games then. The last meaningful starts that Trevor has under his belt was back in 2023 with the New York Jets. He's kind of a journeyman in the NFL, but those guys are very valuable to your roster because you have a lot of experience in a lot of different places. And it's funny, we were joking around in the sports pod is what we'll call it.
The sports pod. I live adjacent to the sports pod.
You do?
I'm sports pod adjacent where my desk is.
We're so much fun. Hang out with us.
You're sports pod adjacent in the stream pod here, so this is great.
Yeah, it's awesome. But no, we were joking about the fact that, oh, Trevor Siemian's coming in to be this third string quarterback. And I said, well, everybody, let's remember the two quarterbacks in front of him don't really have the best health record. They can't stay healthy all of the time. Although Tua was healthy last year, he just didn't play all that great. So, and he mentioned that too, Zach, that is not up to his standard and that he looks to be something entirely different here in Atlanta. And hopefully that's true. He made a Pro Bowl in 2023. He led the league in passing yards. I mean, he can get there. It's just, it wasn't working out in Miami. Career high 15 interceptions. Trevor Siemian comes in and he doesn't necessarily bring immediate competition to those two guys, but what he brings is a plethora of knowledge and experience. And I think that depth is always critical in the QB room.
And you get to that. I mean, a little bit of backstopping too. It is the most important position on the field. You are more expert in this than I am, but I would have been surprised if Atlanta, particularly with the injury history of their quarterbacks, was willing to go without bringing somebody else in who could just give that stability.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way. I mean, typically NFL teams will carry 3, sometimes even more. We've seen it done by Cleveland. We saw that last year when there was a whole roster full of quarterbacks on that roster.
It was a full QB room.
It was very busy. Wear a name tag and introduce yourself every time you walk in there. I'm kidding, but yeah, exactly. The conference of the quarterbacks in Cleveland. No, but I think it's good that they're adding this quarterback, Trevor Siemian, to the room. And they also added another piece, if you want to talk about that as well. I got all day.
Yes, I do. I had a question I was going to ask you, but I want you to answer your own question here because I'm sure it's going to be better than what I was going to ask. The floor is yours, Maria.
No, I think you can ask me whatever after this, but I will tell you. You're welcome. According to reports, Brian Robinson, who also, for some reason, the University of Alabama is just loving the Falcons today, or really in the last couple of weeks. Brian Robinson, who is a stellar running back, with the departure of Tyler Algier from the Falcons, you needed somebody who could get you production. I think B-Rob is exactly that. I am so fired up about this potential signing, and a lot of people are going to look to his last year in San Francisco and say, well, it wasn't productive. What was that? They didn't need him. They have a guy named Christian McCaffrey. And so you think that way with Bijan Robinson as well. Look, I already did it. Brian and Bijan Robinson. There's 2 of them, by the way. B-Rob, it's going to be crazy. But you look at Bijan Robinson and you think he's one of, if not the best running backs in the entire NFL right now. What is Brian going to offer? Well, Tyler Algier got his fair share as well. You need this bruiser of a running back that Tyler Algier was, and I think B-Rob brings that to the table. Incredible work ethic. I think a very high ceiling in the NFL, so I'm excited about this signing.
I think a question some Falcons fans may be wondering, and for some time now as the news of Tua's imminent arrival sort of started to percolate out there, is which version of Tua is Atlanta going to get? He has, and you've described this so well, he has had these moments of incredible highs on the biggest stages in the NFL and in college. And he's had struggles. He's had struggles with his performance on the field. Mm-hmm. He's had a lot of injury struggles. Falcons fans have had their hearts broken before, and they've gotten excited about things before. Yeah. Has Tua spoken at all about his history and about kind of where his head and his body are at as he makes this move?
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing, when you talk about history and him being in college, he made perhaps the best throw of his entire career in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And that's why I asked him today, what is it like being a part of Mercedes-Benz Stadium and coming back to Atlanta? He's excited. He said he has a lot of great memories here. And what version of Tua are we going to get? Hopefully a healthy one, because what I believe is a healthy Tua is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And a lot of people are going to say, Maria, you're literally insane. I've covered Tua now for the better half of a decade, and I've seen what he can accomplish in college and even glimpses of it in the NFL. The problem is, there were so many disjointed things in Miami that never aligned for Tua or the organization, and they really faltered off at the end. And it kind of created this just hurricane, lack of a better term because you're in South Florida, but this
South Florida term there.
Exactly. This hurricane of an effect for Tua and the organization. It was never going to work. And so I think for a lot of athletes, a change of scenery and a breath of fresh air can do you so well. And I think for Tua, who thrives under competition and being told that he can't compete and he can't win the job, you're going to get a very competitive Tua and one that I think will be very successful if, of course, he can stay healthy.
So those are the stakes, and this offseason is not going to last too long. We're going to be back in NFL regular season before you know it.
Yeah, OTAs are around the corner. The guys get back in the building in April, so here we go.
You're going to blink, and then it is game on. Maria Martin, always game on in the sports department. Maria, thank you.
There you go, Zach. There's my plug.
Put that in the Instagram reel. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back in. We have an update on a story we first brought you here on 11Alive Plus yesterday. As breaking news, it was the news of that fire that tore through the historic Floyd County Courthouse in Rome. You're looking at drone footage taken yesterday as that fire is still burning. At the time yesterday, you just saw the top of that historic courthouse collapse and fall down. Firefighters were able to knock down the fire, but there were new questions, according to Jamie Stone, who is the Rome Floyd County fire chief. He said the building was a total loss, and officials were then concerned about, even though the fire had since been knocked down, what happens next for the building, and is it a risk for collapse? Well, our Grace King was in Rome today with an update.
The Rome Floyd County Fire Department says they'll be on scene all day, putting out some of those hot spots and just making sure everything stays under control. But the government here is trying to get things back up and running as soon as possible. So they're looking for a new home for the tax assessor and tag offices that will likely be in the law enforcement complex right next door that was already vacant, as they were planning to put some court offices there. Now, the Superior Court and Lower Courts building, that's actually right behind the historic courthouse. Those are still closed today and likely tomorrow, but they're hoping to get that back open on Friday. Then they'll bring out a structural engineer to assess the condition of this building and see if there's any part of this structure that they can save. They say, this is a centerpiece of their community. It's in their government logo, and it's something they would really like to see saved, but you can see all the pieces kind of falling off, and of course the fire heavily damaged everything, so they're not sure whether any of it is salvageable. But even if not, they say they're looking at ways to preserve parts of the building, maybe some of the bricks or the clock or anything like that, so that they can keep those memories alive for generations to come. We'll let you know as that investigation progresses what the future of that building will be. In Rome, Grace King, 11Alive News.
We turn from Floyd County to the State House, where there are questions about the time zone that we all here in Georgia find ourselves in. Georgia has long had a law that was already passed and on the books that would adopt daylight saving time permanently, but since actually putting that into effect requires an act of Congress, it was stuck in a bit of limbo. State lawmakers now think they have figured out a workaround. Our Doug Richards explains.
Here at the Capitol, there are some who call these Frankenbills. House Bill 154 had been a bill about ambulance first responders. When it passed the House unanimously last year, the Senate had never considered the bill until it decided to completely change it.
We create confusion for families.
Senator Bo Hatchett pitched the rewrite of the ambulance bill, turning it into a bill to eliminate the yearly switches to and from daylight saving time.
Why are we still doing it?
And the Senate passed the bill. It would put Georgia in the Atlantic time zone, 1 hour ahead of Eastern time, the only such state in the U.S. The state representative who introduced the measure protecting ambulance workers as essential responders says he was not entirely surprised by the switch to a bill about clock management.
Things get moved around and get tacked on and whatever, and what might look like one thing, once you see it again, may not look like that at all. So it may be an entirely different bill.
And Richardson says he hopes to pull off the same type of switcheroo by tacking his ambulance bill onto another piece of late-breaking legislation. At the Capitol, Doug Richards, 11Alive News.
So if you have an analog watch, I guess set your watch. Doug's going to continue to follow that bill's passage and pathway through the state capitol, and we will continue to watch for it. We're also going to continue to watch the skies and watch the TSA checkpoints for any travelers trying to make their way through the world's busiest airport, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson. Those lines, the main checkpoint, the main TSA checkpoint, were quite long for many stretches throughout the weekend and Monday. Right now, looking pretty good if you're traveling, as this partial government shutdown impacting the Department of Homeland Security and TSA pay drags on. The line not too long right now at Atlanta's airport. We'll have a live update coming up on 11Alive News at 4, coming up in just moments. We'll see you then.